Hi, welcome to this video about actually calculating and then recording the hotness of chili sauces. So one thing we've noticed at ZP is that kind of the production of chili sauces can be quite artisan, but actually in the end you can actually sort of distill this down to analytical sciences and actual chemistry. So I'll jump in and sort of say, obviously at ZP we do a lot of analysis, and though I'm going to talk about chili sauces as an example, you can bring this sort of analytical sciences to chili products in general, but I will use today's quick video about actually talking about chili sauces and using that as an example. But as I say, this can actually be expanded out to other chili products as well. So first of all, I've just sort of put together a kind of generic ingredients for a chili sauce, where we got 50% by mass of chilies, 7% of some garlic, 25% by water, 9% vinegar, 8% sugar, 2% salt. As I say, this is just meant to be a sort of generic ingredients. I'm not sure how tasty this will be, but let's just say that's my starting point. So I think and know that actually we can ahead of time calculate how hot this is going to be. So if we start off with a sort of bird's eye chili, for example, and first of all we need to measure it. Now I'm super biased. I'm one of the developers of the Food Sense Generation 4. If you're not sure what the Food Sense Generation 4 is, well, in this mode, it's a Scoville heat meter or Scoville heat unit meter or Scoville meter for measuring the hotness. We're actually measuring the capsaicin, which is the molecule that gives it hotness. But anyway, so I'm going into this this example by knowing that I'm going to use 50% chili, but in particular I'm going to use bird's eye chili. They're 75,000 Scoville heat units, which on the scale of things is, some people think it's hot, others say it's super mild, but 75,000 Scoville heat unit is our kind of incoming raw material. And I use words that are kind of more familiar to chemical engineers and chemists than necessarily to chefs, etc. But I know how much I'm going to use, and I know what the hotness of it is. Sort of when you look at the preparation of chili sauces, it's kind of like a two-step process. You kind of got mixing, where you bring together all these ingredients. So in this particular case, what I've done here is I've brought together this 50% by mass chili with the other ingredients. And when we said the score is 75,000 Scoville heat units, first of all, we can measure it, but that is the dry weight of what I should say. Yeah. So if those chilies, even though we're using essentially fresh chilies here, my calculations are based on the idea that they're actually dry, and therefore the 75,000 Scoville heat units is the dry weight. But it doesn't make any difference to you. This is just some of my background calculations. So what we're going to do now is we've brought everything together in this mass ratio, and we're going to simmer it. Now, when we first bring it together, we're going to have a Scoville heat unit of about 3,762 Scoville units. I say about, it seems a little bit accurate that, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to model that we're driving off 50% of the liquid at this point. So you're going to immediately understand that everything's actually getting concentrated, and it's not then too surprising to see that what we've done is come to a point where it's 7,524 Scoville heat units. So what have I established in this? I've established that if we know the ingredients and we know the mass of chilies and we know the incoming Scoville heat unit of those chilies, which we can determine, we can then ahead of time calculate what that Scoville heat unit of the let's say the chili sauce will be, and then as it's simmered down, we can then sort of calculate what the Scoville heat unit will be as we actually drive off the water. Now, if we were to use exactly the same ingredients now, but we were actually to replace this with something like a Carolina Reaper, again, you have to measure the Scoville heat unit of your incoming material. In this case, it's a Carolina Reaper. When people talk about 2.2 million Scoville heat units on the Carolina Reaper, again, they actually mean the dry weight. I'm not sure everyone understands. Not everyone in the, let's say, community or industry understands that this is going on, that we're talking about dry weight rather than wet weight. But again, we can calculate it or not calculate it, we can measure it on the Scoville meter here. So the first process is everything is blended. When it's blended, or rather mixed, we come to a point where we got a Scoville heat unit of about 110,000 Scoville heat units. Again, if we simmer it all down, we'll take off about 50% of that water. Then we'll bring that to about 220,000 Scoville heat units. Just to kind of show you, just in a sort of third example, if we were to replace the chilies with actually a Pepper X, I'm not sure that they're actually really generally available on the market. I think they're still kind of held by Ed Curry, but let's just say we were using Pepper X, and the Scoville heat unit there was about 2.7 million Scoville heat units. When we blend everything together, we'll get to a point of about 135,000 Scoville heat units. And then when we drive off the water, we'll come to about 270,000 Scoville heat units. So what does this say then? It says that you're not necessarily flying blind if you're trying to make a chili sauce, because in fact we can, if we've got the ability to measure the Scoville heat unit of that material, and we know how much mass there is, we can therefore calculate the Scoville heat unit of the chili sauce. First when it's prepared, and then as it's simmered down and therefore concentrated, we can actually calculate the sort of essentially the final Scoville heat unit. So if we know the recipe, we can calculate the Scoville heat unit. I say we, I mean us at ZP, and supporting our clients. So I want to just show this is kind of quite generic. It's not about, it doesn't have to be 50% this and 7% that and 25% that. It doesn't matter to us what the X, Y, Z, O, P, Q, R are here. We're quite good at our chemistry, we're quite good at our math, so we don't mind what these ratios are. We actually don't really mind what those ingredients are. I've kept chili in here because we're talking about chili sauces, but whether those ingredients is, whether some of the ingredients become tomato or tomato, it doesn't matter to us. I'm just kind of showing that we can do this in kind of a very sort of general way as well. I think the strategy is this. If you want to make, for example, a Carolina Reaper chili sauce, and you want to make it 100,000 Scoville heat units, there is a strategy to doing this. So you get your source of Carolina Reaper. I'm assuming here that you've got the Carolina Reaper chili peppers. They have a dry weight Scoville heat unit rating of 2.2 million Scoville heat units. In order to get to the 100,000 Scoville heat units, I can actually calculate it ahead of time and actually sort of come up with the idea that we're going to have 23% of those chilies in amongst everything else. So we can essentially, and if for some reason those chilies came in at 1.8 million or came in at 2.6 million, we can adjust accordingly. So this is kind of a dynamic way of doing it, rather than just kind of following the recipe in a sort of static manner. We can actually dynamically change the mass of chili going into this. But let's say we measure it's 2.2 million Scoville heat units by dry weight. We know that we need 23% by mass of that Scoville heat unit. And what that means is then when we first prepare it, when we mix everything together, we'll actually come in at 50,000 Scoville heat units. How will we know? We can measure it. That's the point. When you've got one of these Food Sense Generation 4, I suppose I will put a link underneath this video as well to the Food Sense Generation 4. I realize there's no links in this video to that. But first of all, we prepare it, and it's at 50,000 Scoville heat units. Then you start the simmering process, where you're essentially concentrating everything, and you can bring that then to 100,000 Scoville heat units by driving off 50% of the water. You can see this is quite linear, that if you drove off 75% of the water, then you probably bring yourself to about 75,000 Scoville heat units. But you can end yourself just at the right point by actually doing repeatable test or following the process. So I sort of started off this video by saying, look, we can actually calculate ahead of time what the hotness of a chili sauce is going to be from its incoming chili Scoville heat unit rating, and by calculating them or knowing the mass of that chili that's going to go into the product. And then we can even predict, as you drive off water and you concentrate it, where that Scoville heat unit rating is actually going to go. So I think at ZP it's fair to say we're very we have brought the Food Sense Generation 4 into this kind of chili production industry. It's a quick, rapid way of determining the Scoville heat unit, but you can also see that we know how to apply it into actually if I can call it, kind of precision manufacturing of chili sauces. So I want to say thank you. If you've got any questions of ZP, don't hesitate to reach out to us, and I'll make sure that I put a link to the Food Sense Generation 4 as well, also underneath the video. If you have any questions, I'll be super interested to hear them and probably prepare another video to answer those. Okay, thanks very much.